On your beverage container, Mark, you talk about 1 to 2.5 cent tax on beverage containers subject to deposit law. I think I understand what that means, but would you just clear that up for me, or make it dumb it down for me so I understand how that works?
Well, yes, this would be a, we're talking about option 2. Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Either one, both of your options under beverage containers contain that phrase.
Yeah, so the deposit law is pretty clear. There's not, when you pay your 5 cents at the grocery store, there's a certain amount of money that comes back in terms of redeemable deposits, but there's also a certain amount of unredeemable, and those goes to the Oregon Beverage and Recycling Organization, and they use that money to help fund beverage recycling centers to do that. We will have to ask the legislature to put an additional fee onto this, and it would be legislative action to be able to do that. Is that answering your question?
So let's say we're going to 10 cents.
In 2018.
You pay your 10 cents, you return your bottle, you get your 10 cents back. What we're saying is you pay 11 or 12 and a half cents and you get 10 cents back. Is that my understanding?
I'm not sure. You're going to have to help me with that one.
I think, Chair Finley and Commissioner Buckmaster, I think that's one way that it could be applied, or it could just be simply applied as a 1 or 2.5 cent tax. So there's 2 ways you could apply it. One the way you described, or one just as a more traditional.
Well, I think it's important to recognize that at sooner or later, and to a greater degree than we do now, the ODF&W is going to have to address the issue of single-use plastics in Oregon and our environment and how it affects emission, marine and inland. And so I see this as a great opportunity to begin some of the work on that, and it's consistent. I think this funding mechanism is consistent with an idea that we should have as a department of hopefully eliminating or certainly reducing dramatically the use of single-use plastics in Oregon. As such, I would hope to see this as a ever declining source of income, because we should hope that we have an ever declining use of single-use beverage bottles. So with that said, why I like the symbolic movement towards using the bottles, I would hope that is a income source that dries up. So I would lean towards something that doesn't dry up the income tax one.
Well, two additional points. I think if it goes to 10 cents, Michigan is the current state that has a 10-cent one. If it goes from 5 to 10, there is pretty clear evidence that the return rate will go up because there's a higher value for it. Now, it's not going to go up to 100%, but it will go up substantially. So there's less litter on the streets, as you will. And then the task force, if I can put words in their mouth, this is a pretty close nexus to, nature, wildlife. We think there's somewhat of a nexus with the bottle bill and funding fish and wildlife and those kind of things. So that's kind of what the argument is there. The nexus on the income tax surcharge is all Oregonians appear to like fish and wildlife resources. All Oregonians aren't really paying for those resources other than the 8% general fund. I think you said 8%, Director? Yeah, 8% general fund. All Oregonians are saying, I think that maybe it ought to be a little bit more. Well, general fund in the legislature is a heavy lift. But maybe with an income tax surcharge, you can say, well, all Oregonians are contributing to the natural resources of this state, whether they be game or non-game or other resources. So we're trying to figure out those nexuses with the criteria. And the beverage container, the reason I hesitated a little bit on the deposit law, we've got a number of things to work out. I've even got some discussions that I want to have about the unreclaimed dollars. If it's going to go from 5 cents to 10 cents, there's going to be an additional revenue there that I think is a pretty easy lift for the legislature, because you're not asking for additional tax dollars there to go after that. So I'm going to be pushing a little bit on that to see if we can possibly go after some of those dollars to help provide long-term sustainable funding. So.
Commissioner Buckmaster, part of what you were saying, I think, was plastic water bottles and the damage to natural resources and coastal resources, Oregon's rivers.
Plastics never break down; they just break up. We're seeing them. We're going to see them, we're seeing them increasingly in our fish. Our 97% of the fulmars and the Pacific Northwest. You go to the most remote spot in Oregon, those pristine, beautiful spots, and trip over a plastic water bottle. Yeah, it's a problem, and it's a problem that only goes that we can't begin to address until we begin to reduce. So that's what I was talking about.
That's what I thought. Thank you. Mr. Woolley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to first thank you, Commissioner Lavon, for your leadership on this task force. You know, I know it's very time consuming, and you put a lot of time into it. Those of you that know me know I have a personal interest not just in the passage of the legislation and the outcome of the funding source, but also the composition of the task force. And so I appreciate that we have some new faces, some new and different perspectives. I know some of the non-traditional interest groups were, the others were characterized as normal interest groups. So it's not that the new ones are abnormal. It's just that they haven't traditionally had a seat at the table, and so that's been important to me, that there are some new voices, some new faces. I had the good fortune and the time to spend a day with the full task force, and then also with one of the subcommittees. The subcommittee involved with getting more people involved in understanding the work that we do in recreating in the outdoors. And I was just impressed with, our staff, Roger Furman, and also the governor's staff, Brett Branscombe, just their level of receptivity to really listen to what people are saying that, again, haven't always had a voice. And just things like new ways to use social media and other kinds of applications, how to do a new kind of outreach to reach people in urban areas. So I'm just very pleased with how this is going, and I just really hope that we get the money. That's really the bottom line. Just a brief question. You mentioned some public involvement occurring prior to your presentation to the legislature in September, and so if you could elaborate a little bit on what sort of public involvement you're doing. And thank you, Jim. Pretty much every public agency I've worked for in the past 25 years, your firm has been involved with. You're almost legendary in the state. So thank you for your time with this effort and supporting us.
Particularly his jokes, they're legendary.
Right. So anyway, the public involvement,
Thank you for
what's
that,
coming up?
Commissioner. So we have a short period of time before we're due in front of the legislature, and now that we've honed in on a limited set of options, we're doing a fatal flaw check, basically, with some of the key groups, just so that when we show up in mid-September, legislature's not surprised and we're not surprised, and key interest groups are not surprised. So we're dealing with, what we did was identify a variety of communities we wanted to outreach to. So the outdoor recreation industry, the conservation community, the business community, the labor community, the underrepresented communities. So I think 8 communities altogether. we're doing what we call a soft touch. We want you to know what we've been doing since January. Here's our current thinking. What's your reaction? And that will then help us frame our, at least our preliminary recommendations going into the legislature in mid-September.
And in what form is that input coming in?
So those are presentations by task force members and staff to these groups, and using materials like we've developed for today's presentation, and informal. Just tell us what's your reaction.
Kind of a conversation format. There's not written testimony or.
Correct, conversation format.
Okay.
Yeah, because we haven't solidified anything yet. We're still in the developing our recommendations, so we're looking for informal input at this point.
Okay. Thanks, Jim.
Commissioner Weber.
I just wanted to thank you. When this whole process started, I thought it was an impossible goal. Everybody's in favor of giving everybody more money as long as they don't have to pay for it. So I'm looking at this and going, gee, who's gonna jump up and volunteer to pay more money? And it'll be interesting how this proceeds. I know from the fishing and hunting community, they would like some help. And of course, when we raise their fees, they complain no end. So getting broader support is really good. And so when, I want to thank you and all of your members for their work on this and coming up with ideas that seem to me to have the possibility of acceptance.
Thank you. Yeah.